Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Tuesday, December the 3rd, 2024, which makes this the news for Monday, December the 2nd, 2024, day 1013 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv, a major European capital currently under siege. I see the peeps are coming in. Little Red Sunflower, how you doing? Hey, PT. Hey, Goldie. Hey, Vanetta Larrett. Hey, Tisno. Hey, PH. How you guys doing tonight? Hey, Hobo. You are funny, Hobo. Stick around. Not that I have anything funny to talk about tonight, but we'll see. Hey, Cheyenne. Hey, Lars. I'm good. How are you? Jeff Robbins, how do you do? Theo, how do you do? And DT is here. Big D. Hey, Big D. What's going on? I want to start by thanking the sponsor of tonight's live, Ballerina. Thank you, Ballerina. Ballerina is a long-term supporter of the channel and a dear friend of the channel. And so thank you, Ballerina, for sponsoring tonight's live. Let's see. We will start. Hey, Travis, how you doing? Hey, Chef Deb. Guys, one of the things that I started doing was, I've been creating unique content for the Patreon. And I've started to release that material to the Patreon 24 hours after it's on the Patreon. So check out on YouTube. That's all going up on YouTube for the things that the Patreon folks get early access to. All right, so this is the news for Monday, December 2nd, 2024, day 1013 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. Last night, overnight, December 2nd, the Russians sent 110 drones, attack drones of the Shahed 131, 136 class onto the territory of Ukraine. Mobile defense forces and elements of the Ukrainian armed forces shot down 52 of the 110. Another 50 were lost to electronic warfare, we assume, though these days it looks more like they're getting spoofed and headed into Belarus. The Ukrainians acknowledged that another 6 were returned to sender, returned back onto the territory of Russia or diverted to Belarus. One was still in the air at the time that the Air Force made this report. And another one hit a residential building in Ternopil. There were many casualties. That means that the Ukrainians shot down 108 out of 110 attack drones. Every day, these guys save hundreds of lives. That's a 98% interception rate. It's huge, just huge. Hey, Jay. Hey, Mel. All right, so let's start now. Now, look, you look around the world, and what have we been talking about on this channel for a year? We have said from the beginning that if we failed to deal with Putin in an expedient fashion in Ukraine, if we didn't draw the line here, that it would embolden the mullahs in Iran, it would embolden the Kim regime in North Korea, and we are seeing all of that happen. Now, the dominoes are starting to, Mel, you're not wrong, right? The dominoes are starting to fall. And we saw a major domino start to fall in Syria. In just 3 days, the capital in Aleppo fell. And there's a lot to talk about with this, right? Let's just start with a little background on Syria and Bashir al-Assad. Remember, this guy, he started with a country of 20 million. His war displaced his dependency on the Russian Air Force to carpet bomb cities out of existence. Killed 600,000 of his own people. displaced 10 million of them, flooding Syrian refugees into Turkey, causing a refugee crisis in Turkey, and has imprisoned 200,000 of his own citizens. Fully 5% of the country has either been unalived by this guy or is in prison because of this guy. Fully half of the country has lost their homes and are now living as refugees. It's a nightmare of mismanagement. And of course, one of the partners that Bashar al-Assad turned to, and where now it looks more like he's hiding because he's been in Moscow for 3 days. And yet, right, remember at the beginning of this war, the full-scale invasion into Ukraine, remember the famous line that Zelensky said, "I don't need a ride, I need ammo." Well, Bashir here, he hopped on a plane and he ran to Moscow, and he's still there, which makes me wonder if he's gone just for help or if he's looking for a place to stay. Now, Russia is in Syria for numerous reasons. 2 of them are because Syria provides a Mediterranean seaport for the Russians. The Russian naval fleet has a Mediterranean port in Tartus, Syria. And also on the Mediterranean, just north of there, they have an airport from which they can run airplanes anywhere in the Middle East in minutes, right? And so it's an expression of Russian power in the Middle East. We don't know what's going to happen. But the rebel forces that overwhelmed Aleppo in 3 days and are now taking hits along with the civilians in Aleppo from Russian aircraft for the first time that the Russians have been running bombing sorties in Syria in 8 years. First time they've been bombing in 8 years. Those forces are less than 80 miles from the Khamenei air base. They are less than 100 miles from the Tartus port. This situation is so critical that the head of the Russian Navy, Admiral Muzanov, is in Tartus on the ground right now coordinating activities. Now, we don't know what those activities are. The Russian troops west of Aleppo seem to have all retreated, abandoning the Khan military base, where the rebels picked up no less than 5 L-39 aircraft, 1 Mi-8 helicopter, at least 1. We have photo evidence of 1. There may have been more at the airbase at the time that they took it. As well as Iranian drones and rockets. It appears that the Russians just abandoned the base, and that's not the only base that they abandoned. There's evidence of Russian equipment being scored at multiple locations because the Russians pulled out ahead of the rebel forces. Now, look, I don't want to make these rebel forces out to be the good guys. As far as I can tell, there are no good guys in this whole situation. But anything that puts the Russians to heel is a good thing right now. The group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the best translation of that name that I can get is The Life of Tahrir al-Sham. And I don't know if that's an ideology, a person, a place, all of the above. I just don't know at this time yet. We'll find out more about Hayat Tahrir al-Sham in the days coming, I'm sure. But they are a loose affiliation, a confederation of different Islamic and jihadist movements who did separate from Al-Qaeda in 2017 and since then have taken more moderate stances. But again, in no way do I want to paint these guys as the good guys. In their defense, I will say that not only did they separate from Al-Qaeda, but additionally, they have proved in this offensive to be politically aware of the consequences of protecting civilians, unlike the Russians, who have so far bombed hospitals and schools, right? We know that. They have made public announcements that Christians and civilians of all types are to be protected. And in fact, we have video that came out yesterday of normal Sunday church services going on for Christians in Aleppo. And so out of the box, they are not persecuting Christian minorities or introducing any dhimmi concepts. We don't see that from them. The Russians, for their part, are abandoning Damascus. All the diplomatic staff is leaving. Russian nationals living in Damascus are leaving. But the Russians are on the way out. We have repeated videos of these guys tearing Russian flags down and tearing down portraits of Bashar al-Assad. The Kremlin, for its part, has fired the general that was in charge, General Sergei Kislov. Now, this guy was dismissed from Ukraine because of his failed campaigns in the Kyiv direction. And so he was dismissed from Ukraine 2 years ago after the loss of the Kyiv Oblast and put in charge of Syria. The guy who used to be in charge of Syria, General Alexander Kryko, who had formerly commanded Russian Federation forces in Syria, is said to have been appointed as the new commander for Syria and is en route to the country. He was head of the Russian armed forces in Syria from 2017 to 2019. Additionally, one of the top colonels there has been summoned back to Moscow to explain how all of this happened. How did this happen? Now, look, the reality is we know how it happened. We know how it happened. And the onus for it happening is on Putin. Putin pulled his men and machines out of Syria because he needed them in Ukraine. Putin started the Hamas-Israeli war, which expanded to Lebanon. And then the Israelis hit Hezbollah so bad that Hezbollah isn't there to support Assad. So Hezbollah and Russia, the two main pillars that have kept the Assad regime in power through their violence, fear, and intimidation, aren't there for him. It's no wonder he's hiding in Moscow. Damascus could be next. The rebels are crying to Damascus, to Damascus. But it appears that the Syrian army has finally gotten its shit together and is meeting the rebels on the ground in a place called, I'm sorry if I'm getting this wrong, I believe it's Hamza. It's not Homa. The city of Homa is in rebel hands. But nearby there is another city that I believe is Homza. And Homza is where they apparently are clashing. Now, when all of this first started happening, immediately, I thought they were Russian trolls, and maybe they were, or maybe they were people who were just better informed than me. Because immediately in the comments, people started saying things that Ukraine was behind all of this. Ukraine was behind all of this, which I don't believe is true per se, right? I think that the rebels have taken advantage of a strategic time when the enemy is weak. And the enemy is weak because of the war in Ukraine and the secondary war between Hamas and Israel. That weakened the enemy. However, as it turns out, according to the Ukrainian GUR, elements of the Ukrainian GUR, the Kimik group, have been embedded with these rebels in Syria for at least 6 months. They have been doing training on tactics, teaching them the battlefield experiences that they had fighting the Russians from the Ukraine war, and teaching them about drones. They've been there 6 months. Now, this should not come as a surprise to any of us, especially me, though it did, I have to tell you. Because back in June, we reported on an airbase attack that included Ukrainian forces outside of Aleppo, just to the west of Aleppo. On September 15th, I reported that the Ukrainians were in Syria and that they had blown up a Russian drone factory and factory for improvised explosive devices. Remember that? I forgot all about it until I read this statement from the GUR, which reminded us of those hits. And that also went on to say that Ukrainian forces have been involved with the rebels in hitting multiple Russian targets in Syria for the last 6 months. So it's not that Ukraine is behind it, but Ukraine recognized the opportunity and have supported the rebels in exploiting it. Yes, they have. Yes, they have, and good for them. Because didn't Budanov say the words that wherever Russian war criminals hide, wherever they do evil in the world, we will be there to hunt them down? Yeah, he said those words, or something very close to that. And they are certainly proving that they are willing to do that in Syria. Now, Syria is one domino to watch. What's another domino to watch? Clearly, it's Georgia, right? It's Georgia. Georgia wants to be in the EU. Georgia wants to turn west. Georgia wants to be out from under the thumb of the Kremlin gremlins. But boy, the Kremlin gremlins are putting up a fight. We have 200,000 Georgians in the streets of Tbilisi getting hit regularly with water cannons and rubber bullets for the last 4 days. They are out there building barricades. Somebody's dad must have a fireworks factory because they got bottle rockets and Roman candles out the ass, and they are just firing them at police nonstop. Boom, 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 boom. Bottle rockets, right? They're not going to do any damage. They're certainly not lethal. But they are an annoyance, and they make the point that the people can arm themselves as well as the police. It is cold in Georgia to be using those water cannons. A Georgian MP was caught. I found a video of a Georgian MP from the opposition party out on a Telegram channel. And he made an appeal to the West and the world for help against the hybrid war that they are engaged in with Russia. And we know that that's what's going on. Russia still holds 20% of Georgia, right? The South Ossetia and, I'm going to forget now the other area there. South Ossetia and another region of Georgia. And those two regions together make up about 20% of what Georgia, the internationally recognized borders of Georgia, is. Russian bloggers are calling for hitting the protests, are calling for hitting the protests in Tbilisi with Fab 1500 bombs. Now that's a 1500 kilogram explosive. That's a big fucking bomb. These things create craters that are 80 meters wide, right? That's about 240 feet. That's 2 football fields. You drop a bomb like that on a crowd of 200,000 people, you're going to have tens of thousands of casualties. And that's what these Russian bloggers are calling for. Medvedev is saying that the president, who is not recognizing the results of the stolen election, is expired, and that people like that used to end up at the end of a lamppost, is what he said, clearly threatening the president. The protests have begun to spread to schools, so that colleges and universities around Georgia are going on strike. The kids are in the streets standing in solidarity with the protesters in Tbilisi. It's another domino to watch. Dominoes to watch include Belarus, We think of Belarus as Russia's great friend, as part of the Ruski Mir, which it is. But the people of Belarus have other ideas. The people of Belarus have stopped Russian supply trains from transiting through Belarus. And today they were on display doing it again. They lit a train on fire before it could make the transit from Russia to Ukraine with weapons. They stopped the train, they lit the train on fire. These are partisans inside of Belarus, reportedly not Ukrainians. This is a domino to watch. With the involvement of North Korea, South Korea is a domino to watch as well. Will South Korea change its tune and come in on the side of Ukraine? Now, at this time, the answer is no. Defense Secretary Umerov from Ukraine was in South Korea talking to the South Koreans about arms and ammunition. And the word is that South Korea respectfully denied the request to sell Ukraine any lethal aid because it is a violation of South Korean law. The way that the law is in South Korea right now, South Korean law prohibits the export of any South Korean weapons to a war zone. And so right now, South Korea cannot export under its own rules weapons to Ukraine. However, the South Korean government issued a statement that it stands in unity with Ukraine and for the recognition of the international borders. I just got flagged for civic and election misinformation. I don't know what I said that could be construed as election misinformation. We're talking about the laws of South Korea. South Korea said it stood in unity with Ukraine and that it supported the territorial integrity of Ukraine back to the 1991 borders. And it said that it would cooperate with intelligence on North Korean weapons shipments and troop movements, as well as understanding the Korean presence in Ukraine. Scholz is in Kyiv for the first time in 2.5 years. He is facing pressure at home with a vote of no confidence coming up on the 16th of this month. No, nobody here thought that Georgia was in the U.S. Stop it. Stop that. You silly. Okay, so Scholz is facing a vote of no confidence the 16th of December. And under that pressure, he's making some foreign trips. He came to Ukraine, and in addition to his meeting with Zelensky, he made an announcement of an arms package to be delivered in December. This is not new spending on the part of Germany, but rather part of previous commitments. But in December, they intend to deliver 2 IRSTs, one medium, one long range, Leopard 1 tanks, attack drones, winter gear, small arms, and heating systems totaling 650 million euros this month. Dominoes to watch. I didn't think Romania would be one. And I certainly didn't think that Romania could be tipping the other way toward Russia. But it appears that it could be. Now, the good news is, right now, we saw about 2 weeks ago in the first round of elections in Romania, we saw this crazy far-right, pro-Putin, pro-Kremlin guy come out of nowhere and take about 23% of the vote, the number one spot. Unbelievable. He did not do as well this round. The Social Democrats took the largest chunk of votes with 23.5%. After that, his party, the far-right AUR, took almost 18%, 17.9% of the vote. And then two other far-right groups, SOS and POT, took 5% each. That's about 30% of the votes going to the far right. But they are not all for one party. So there is this new level of fragmentation in the Romanian parliament. And how they're going to assemble a working government is anybody's guess. It's really anybody's guess right now. The good news, though, is that the lion's share of votes did go to the Social Democrats, the current ruling party in Romania. It's worth mentioning in 2020, far-right groups only got 10% of the vote. This year they got 30%. The rise of the far right, right? It's like everybody says, right? America sneezes, Europe catches a cold. America's got fascism. Europe does too. Now, it appears that we may have seen the first losses of North Koreans in Kursk. We have some recorded losses of North Koreans in the occupied territories, but this is the first report of them being unalived in Kursk. Zelensky made this claim yesterday in an on-air interview, but did not give any numbers. Now, I have to say I have been unverified. I have not been able to verify this claim. But one of the Ukrainian Telegram channels is claiming that in an ATACMS strike on a headquarters and troop concentration area, they unalived 200 Russians, 500 North Koreans, and one North Korean general, all in one hit. Now, that's not impossible, right? If they were out on a parade ground and cluster ATACMS were used, if they were in bunkers and storm shadows were used, it's not impossible. But I want to point out that those claims have not been verified. The Military Intelligence Directorate of Ukraine is saying that expansion of support from North Korea to Russia is ongoing, including the delivery of 100 artillery systems, 170 millimeter self-propelled guns, 240 millimeter anti-aircraft guns, 100 short-range ballistic missiles of the KN-23-24 type, 5 million shells this year, 5 million 152 and 122 millimeter standard Soviet shells. And then according to South Korean intelligence, the North Koreans are planning to send up to 100,000 foot soldiers, up to 100,000 foot infantry. So again, as we have warned from the beginning on this channel, a failure to deal with Putin in Ukraine would mean that the mullahs in Iran and the Kim regime in North Korea would be emboldened. And clearly they are. North Korea is getting all kinds of missile technology from the Russians. Make no mistake. In today's episode of Russia on Fire, the polystyrene plant in Ekaterinburg is on fire, baby. It's a fire of 2,000 square meters. The plant looks like it's been immolated. This plant makes polystyrene that's used in camouflage for frontline positions and drones, as well as other essential drone components. The cause of the fire is under investigation. There's no reports of drones, and Ekaterinburg is far away. So it's more likely partisan activity, an industrial accident, or owners who can't keep up with the onerous demands of the Kremlin and think that the only way out is to light a match. It could be just that simple. Polystyrene is flammable shit. You got to be careful with that shit. They could all just be overworked and people are making mistakes. Ukraine unveiled the new self-propelled gun, the Bohana or Bogdana 155 millimeter gun. It outranges the Russian 152 millimeter gun. The head of the Duma, right? That's Russia's parliament or Congress. Volodans. He was supposed to go to India. But guess what? The Indians canceled the trip. Why did the Indians cancel the trip? They canceled the trip because they didn't like that intermediate range ballistic missile hitting Dnipro. They don't like these threats and intimidations of nuclear warfare. Again, as I keep saying, the Oreshnik bullshit hitting Dnipro with that intermediate range ballistic missile has completely backfired politically for the Kremlin. Modi didn't like it. He's canceling meetings with representatives of Russia. Xi didn't like it. We haven't heard anything from him yet, but you know he didn't like it. He doesn't like this thing with the North Koreans. He didn't like that thing with the missile. Russia has set the defense budget for 2025 with the flat-out defense budget is up to 13.5 trillion rubles, or about $120 billion. That's 32.5% of the entire federal budget. That number is up from 16%, so it's doubled from 2023. The 2025 budget is double the 2023 budget. With internal security, that number rises all the way up to 40% of the federal budget. So you add Rosguardia in there, the kind of National Guard, and other internal defense forces like police and FSB. And all of a sudden, you're talking about a 40% of the federal budget going to security. Now, last but not least, from the headlines, before we go to Q&A, there has been a significant change to President Zelensky's language around talks with Russia. Nobody is talking about peace talks anymore. Have you noticed? They're talking about a ceasefire agreement, which is a very different thing. A very, very different thing. Zelensky has said the words, "I know that our army doesn't have the strength to take the territories back by force, so we must seek a diplomatic solution." Now, could it be that this change in rhetoric from Kyiv is because they think that the Russian economy is about to collapse and Putin's on his way out? He's about to be shown that 30th story window, the view from which he loves for others so much. That could well be, because by taking this tact, Zelensky could very well bring the shooting part of the war to an end, and then wait for Russia to fall apart and take advantage of that. And Common Sense in Crazy Time agrees with me. Right on, bro. Right on. Putin is not well. Or one of his doubles isn't well. The guy who's in Kazakhstan was twitching like a Parkinson's patient with the DTs. Not even kidding. Now, in terms of the possibilities for a ceasefire, right? What do they look like really? Well, there is the partition idea, right? The East Germany, West Germany idea. That you bring the western part of the country into NATO, the eastern part stays in Russia, and there is some force there to patrol it. Now, Trump is saying that it should be the Germans, the French, and the NATO partners. Well, I can tell you right now, that's a non-starter for Putin. There's no fucking way Putin is going to want a bunch of NATO troops patrolling territory he says is Russia. That's not going to happen. Zelensky is making this offer with the supposition, or rather with it predicated on security guarantees that they get into NATO right away. And for Trump, that's a non-starter. So it will be interesting to see how this thing works out and where these cards fall. But I do think that by making the initial offer, the initial concession, Zelensky puts himself in a great place for courting Donald Trump. Because now Zelensky can say he's made concessions. It's time for Russia to make some concessions. And if Russia refuses and tries to play Trump for a fool, he's not going to appreciate it one bit. And then we could get into the porcupine model, right? Like what we do with Israel. Arm Ukraine to the teeth so that there's missiles pointing out in every direction like a porcupine. So those are my top stories. That's the headlines from today, Monday, December the 2nd, 2024. We'll go to Q&A now, but first, let me just thank the sponsor of tonight's live, Ballerina. Let me also thank the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PTJ, and Travis. I want to thank Nightshade, who has the Peters Peeps group on the Book of Faces. And I want to thank Vanetta Larrett, who has our Google Doc share, where you can get letters to the UN, the White House, Senate, and Congress on all things Ukraine. And I also want to thank Lars, who has the Alexievich archive and the Discord server. Okay, what's up with Putin threatening France about Africa? Don't know. I didn't see that specifically. I'd need more context. But, I mean, the short answer probably is the Africa Corps, right? What used to be Wagner, but is now called the Africa Corps, are in about a dozen countries in Africa, doing everything they can to steal all the natural resources for themselves. We've seen the Ukrainians take them on along with Mali rebels in Mali. We've seen them take on Sudanese rebels, the Rapid Response Force in Sudan, the Ukrainian Commence group from the GUR, same guys that are in Syria. And he's paying for all these Iranian Shaheeds with gold that he steals from Africa. So he spends a lot of time and energy in Africa, our boy Putin does. And of course, the French used to have a little colonial empire there, certainly through Algiers and Morocco and that whole part of the world. So I would guess it has something to do with that. Hey, PH, how you doing? Hey, laddie. But I don't know. I didn't see that. Hey, Roberto Clammett. We don't arm Ukraine enough, Mello. Not nearly enough. We arm Ukraine enough so that it doesn't fail. Just barely. And that 7 months that we took off not arming Ukraine, that hurt them. There's a lot of blood on the hands of the Republicans who stood in the way of that aid, in my opinion. Bobby, I think that's what Zelensky is thinking. Anyone know what percentage of the budget went to defense when the Soviet Union collapsed? Overstretched. Yeah, Big D, they're making the same mistakes again. These people do not learn. They absolutely do not learn. Will Ukraine have any type of domestically produced long-range weapon soon? Trey, it's my understanding that they have built a ballistic missile with like 1,000-kilometer range or something like that. And it is supposed to be in serial production now. When it will be ready for the battlefront, I don't know the answer to that. We do have a lot of Humvees and Bradleys. We have a lot of Abrams. We have 1,700 Abrams sitting in the desert, not doing anything, just rusting away. You mean to tell me we couldn't spare 300 instead of 30? Can Ukraine send some troops to Syria with javelins? They're already there, Bobby. Not a lot, because Ukraine can't spare a lot. But a company of the GUR Commence Group is there supporting the rebels. They've been there 6 months. Okay, how are we doing on time? Let's see. Oh my gosh, it's 20 of, we still have 20 minutes. Guys, I just found out that if my live is less than an hour, I can repost the whole thing to TikTok. I just found this out. So from now on, I am going to try to keep the live just under an hour so that it can be posted. And honestly, I've had a long day. I am tired. I have a long day tomorrow. If nobody has any serious questions about Ukraine, we can call it a night. Anything else from anybody? Well, Sandra, I don't. Oh, it does get dark early these days. Who's got a new $750 million package, Shadow Hunter? Good night, Roberto. Good night, little red sunflower. Who's got a new $750 million package? Good night, Bobby. Good night, Jerry O. Ukraine troops are deserting en masse. I think they misspelled Russian. Now, look, that's not to say that there aren't defections. Of course there are. The United States had 50,000 troops defect during World War II. But mass defections, I know of no such thing happening. Not to say that it isn't, but I don't know of it. And if it happens, I'll be the first to tell you. You know, I just saw a video that was all about mass defections from the Russian army. Then you watch the video and it's not happening. It's just not happening. I hate that kind of clickbait. So this isn't a new package. I mean, it's a specific package, but it's going to be out of the money that's already allocated, right? That's not a new package, like the German package that Schultz announced today. That's out of the 2.1 billion that they announced back in September. It's not a new package. Oh, that's a good point too. There's a big difference between desertion and defection, right? Just deciding you want to live and walking off the battlefield is different from I want to fight for the enemy. 20,000 Russians are joining the cause daily. Let that guy stay. He's funny. He's funny enough. Oh. Thank you. This content is no else. Tough Love Coach. If you look, I have a video called Sources and Methods. I spend a lot of time on Russian Telegram channels, Ukrainian Telegram channels, the Kyiv Post, the Kyiv Independent, Euromaidan Press, TASS. I read TASS, so you don't have to. Pravda, Ukrainska Pravda. I spend all day distilling from multiple sources, as much of this, the AP, Reuters, etc., as much of this as I can. Yeah, right. If they were recruiting 20K a day, why would Putin need North Korea? I read TASS when I hate myself. Right, exactly, Blue Ariel. Exactly. Oh, God. Bobby, I don't follow other Ukrainian creators on TikTok. And the reason for that is because I don't want to sound like them. I don't want to parrot them. I don't want to have my opinions influenced by them. When people send me specific stuff, I'll watch it to see what other people are saying. But I found in the beginning when I started out, I was watching them all the time, and then I was doing reports on the same stuff they were. And, you know, somebody just said they don't see the details that I bring to the table in other places. And the reason is because I don't copy anybody else. I support them. I have nothing against any of them. I'm proud of the work that we all try to do. But I don't watch them. No. Blue Smurf, right now, this is my profession. And I'm on YouTube. Everything gets posted to YouTube. Do you think the high rate of desertion is because Ukraine hasn't been able to rotate troops out? Debbie, nobody said that there was a high rate of desertion. To the best of my knowledge, that is not a thing. Yeah, so right now, this is what I do. There is a Who Am I video that gives you a better sense of my background and stuff. Okay, guys, you know what? I think I'm going to take a break tonight. I'm going to end a little bit early. That way we know that this will fit onto the Tickety Talk, and I can do some other work that I got to get done tonight. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to... Dusty, nobody likes talking about this ceasefire less than me. I assure you. But we got to look it square in the eye if we're going to fight it. Good night, Colin. Good night, Truth Hurts. What's the latest that with the impact to energy infrastructure in Ukraine? Well, Pablo, we've been having rolling blackouts here in Kyiv now for 2 weeks since some drones hit a local power plant. That's been a problem for us. There are parts of the country. I had heard that Kherson has gone days without electricity after some recent hits there. I'm with you, Bobby, but I don't think that's in the Trump plan, boy. So it's a tough call, Pablo. It's a tough call. The Estonians have sent a bunch of components of thermal power plants that are being integrated into what's left of the thermal power plants here to provide heat this winter. But it's a tough one. Did I get my Ukrainian bank account operating? I think I did, Shadow Hunter. For the most part, it's working. Like, it works in restaurants, and I can send money to other Ukrainian cards and get money on my card like normal Ukrainians do. But I cannot connect it to PayPal yet. That I have not been able to figure out. Okay, I will. Thank you. I sure appreciate it. John says, why don't they hit back at Russian power plants? Well, they do. But do you notice the difference? When the Ukrainians hit a Russian power plant, it's because it's a power plant for a military facility. It's a war crime to target civilian energy infrastructure. That's why the Ukrainians don't target civilian energy infrastructure in Russia, because the Ukrainians avoid war crimes, unlike the Russians who embrace them. That's why. What else was I going to say? Oh, I was going to thank the sponsor of tonight's live, Ballerina, who is a great friend to this channel and who I cannot say enough good things about, and who I don't know if I would still be on the air without him. I definitely would not be on the air without the physics-defying wizard from my home state, who's here with us tonight, Hacky Sack Trav. If you don't know Hacky Sack Trav, Trav is a buddy of mine from Pennsylvania, and he is a physics-defying wizard. You should see him with the Hacky Sack boy. Maybe he doesn't exactly break the laws of physics, but he bends the fuck out of gravity. That is for sure. Yes, he does. Thanks, Dusty. Thank you, Dusty. So thanks to Ballerina. Thanks to the moderator staff, the best moderators on the Tickety Talk, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PTJ, and Travis. Big thanks to Hacky Sack Trav, who is my TikTok mentor and without whom I would not be on this platform or doing any of this. Big thanks to Vanetta Laird, who has our Google Docs share. Big thanks to Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces. And a very big thank you to Lars, who has the Alexievich archive and the Discord server. And Kirby Van Birch, thank you so much. It would be very helpful to me, Kirby, if you could kick me $5 a month and join the Patreon. If you look at my Patreon, you'll see I bring in $1,339 a month, I think, is what I live on, pal. And it is not easy. And I'm not complaining because I have 90 paid Patreon folks. There are 90 people in the world who support me enough that I can live this life and do this work. It is extraordinarily rewarding to me. And I appreciate the opportunity that the Patreon supporters give me every day. And I work very hard to make sure that they get their money's worth. I really do. 300 hours of work, I don't think it's... Well, let's be honest with ourselves for a second. 10 times 50, 30, 80. It's about, you're not wrong, Bobby. When you add it all together, including the stuff I do on the weekends, it's probably about 300 hours of work a month. It probably is. And I'm not complaining. Because of you guys, I have a pretty manageable life. It doesn't have a lot of luxury, but it's got a great deal of satisfaction. That's for sure. Like Thanksgiving. Introducing peanut butter on celery to Ukrainians. And turkey and stuffing. No, I didn't have stuffing this year. Candied yams with marshmallows. That was the big hit. The Ukrainians could not get over the candied yams. They were loving it. There's 18 Ukrainians, 19 if you count the baby, who would never know what candied yams were if it weren't for you guys. So thank you. All right. I tell you what, I'm going to call it a night, guys. I really do appreciate everybody's time, attention, and patience for the conversation, for the questions, and for your thoughtful consideration of the people of Ukraine as you go about your daily life. Consider joining the Patreon and keeping us on the air. Please like, follow, and share. Make it a great day, everybody.